You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Yeah, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm excited to introduce a colleague of mine, Dr. Linda Black. Dr. Linda Black is the CEO of Gallant Therapeutics, a company whose mission is to bring the life-altering benefits of regenerative medicine to all pets. She led the development of Gallant's stem cell platform and therapeutic pipeline of stem cell products. She's held executive leadership roles at Medicus Biosciences, SciStem, and with the first veterinary regenerative medicine company, VetStem Biopharma, where she led the development of an off-the-shelf stem cell production for dogs. Dr. Black holds a DVM degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a PhD in cell and molecular biology from University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, and completed her postdoctoral fellowship at GlaxoSmithKline. It was so difficult to read that last one. Linda, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time. That's quite the background. Wow.
Thanks so much for having me.
So can you tell me from your background, so you did the molecular biology in the human healthcare, is that correct?
I did. Yeah, I mean, molecular biology is the same whether it's veterinary or human, but I did it at the medical school there. So in essence, yes.
Very interesting. It's actually exactly what my wife has. She's a DVM, and then she did molecular biology, and she did a lot of research in cancer. And I could never understand how she got on that path. But what was your journey? How did you go into medicine? And after the vet school, did you practice at all, or did you just jump into medicine? Was that a plan? How did that all evolve?
Yeah, it actually wasn't a plan. My original plan when I became a veterinarian was to be an equine practitioner. I grew up riding and showing horses. I loved my horse more than anything. He almost died one day, and a veterinarian saved his life. And that was sort of the impetus for me to choose veterinary medicine. I did that. I went to veterinary school at UW-Madison and came out and did about 3 years of practice and quickly realized, like, ooh, this is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. It's more a people business than a horse business. And so that became somewhat challenging for me. And I was also interested more deeply in research. So through veterinary school, I worked in a research lab, a couple of them, and I became very enchanted with science and pursuing scientific research. And so that was also in my mind and in my heart as I was, practicing in, 40 degree below weather in Wisconsin. And so I then moved into trying to find a career that I could do both. And so that led me to my postdoc at what was then SmithKline Beecham in laboratory medicine, where I was helping a number of researchers there to be able to use animal models better, create better research through that. And then it still wasn't really enough. I really was craving to be a basic scientist. And so I did my PhD at Penn then. And I was going to be a basic cancer biologist at an institute or at a vet school. And then I had my son, and that sort of changed my life. And I recreated myself. I stayed home with him. I couldn't really leave him and go back and do another postdoc, which is the path in academia that you need to take before you're an investigator. And so I stayed home with him, was a science writer, and then moved into consulting for a large pharma company. And then I got involved and recruited to a veterinary regenerative medicine company where I fell in love with the space. And that's where I've spent most of my career.
Now, keep us going. What has happened since, and what take us up to current day since you're doing such a good job?
Sure. So I worked at a number of companies the first one was VetStem Biopharma, where I fell in love with the space. I was, shortly after my PhD was finished, et cetera, and a veterinarian, and we were doing clinical trials on dogs, looking at the effects of stem cells in dogs with osteoarthritis. And it was just almost shocking to me that we didn't really know a lot about stem cells at the time. We didn't know how they really functioned, but we knew when we put them in joints of dogs that couldn't really navigate stairs well anymore, and we could see them 30 days later a good majority of them out chasing tennis balls again in the backyard, it was a pretty magical time. I fell in love with the space and wanted to stay in it and devote my life to some aspects of, regenerative medicine and applying them to the lives of pets. So I had a couple of different companies between then and where I'm at now at Gallant. But at Gallant, we've been here about 5 years now, going on 5 years. And this is our entire mission, is to bring off-the-shelf therapies, off-the-shelf stem cell therapies to pets everywhere.
Wow. What a journey. And it really reminds me of my wife when her and I met. She was going through molecular biology, and she was in cancer research, and she always called me a plumber. Because she said, well, as a vet, 3 medications and 5 conditions. And to a degree, I agree. and then she was a real scientist, but I just couldn't see myself, killing 100 mice a day, which is, I thought her job was about. But I couldn't argue with the fact that she's a scientist and I'm not.
Yes.
But tell us more about, because I'm not a scientist and just a plumber, can you tell us more about stem cells? To my shame, I don't know exactly how that works. What is it? And to those that also, amongst our listeners, can you tell us what is the stem cell? Where does it come from? And how is it applied? And how is the whole world of regenerative medicine work?
Sure.
And that's in like 30 seconds.
So stem cells are really our body's natural healing mechanism. So we have stem cells all through our body and a variety of tissues. So when you cut your arm, for example, it's stem cells that are the thing that is orchestrating the healing of that cut. And so about 17 years ago, we learned that we can harness the healing power of those stem cells by extracting them from certain tissues. In that period of time, it was adipose, and Gallant, our portfolio is all stem cells from the uterus. And you take them out, you grow them up in special media, you expand them, and then you give them back to the patient for certain conditions. And they act like little drugstores. So they go into the body and they are met with whatever the milieu is there. Maybe it's inflammatory, maybe there's an immune system, maybe it's aberrant in some way. And it senses that and then reacts by secreting cytokines and other molecules that help to mitigate whatever it's finding. And so in the case of osteoarthritis, there's a variety of ways that it can work to either create new cartilage or decrease inflammation. And in our particular first product's case, feline chronic gingival stomatitis, which is based on an aberrant immune system, it works to normalize that aberrant immune system and heal the body. So unlike small molecules, for example, or monoclonal antibodies, which are pretty hyped up recently, which are single target therapies, they are not disease modifying. In this case with stem cells, they're actually disease modifying. So you're putting them in the body and you're actually changing the biology of the pet. And so that's what makes them special. It also makes them hard to develop, but we're well on track in developing stem cells for our first product, off-the-shelf therapy for feline chronic gingival stomatitis, which is a disease that affects about 2 million cats in the US. And about the standard of care for those cats is you have to give them steroids and take out all their teeth. And still more than 30% of those cats, they don't respond to that, and they will go on to be euthanized and have a really poor quality of life along that way to euthanasia. And so we worked with Dr. Arzi at UC Davis, and he's the director of the Veterinary Institute for Regenerative Cures. He was the one that first started showing that stem cells worked very well to save these cats. And we started working with him. He was using adipose cells. We're using uterine-derived cells, and showed the same thing that he had shown. And so that's the path for our first product. We're getting that product. That product has MUM status, which is kind of like orphan drug on the human side. And we're on track for conditional approval of that product in 2025.
Super cool. So Gallant Therapeutics, obviously, you're on your way to your first product. What was the genesis for the company? We got the origin story and kind of how you ended up here, but what made you decide, okay, I'm going to start a company, we're going to do these things. And then I guess to carry the conversation a little bit forward, where do you see Gallant Therapeutics in 5 years' time?
And is it Gallant or Gallant?
Gallant Therapeutics.
Oh, thanks, Ivan.
Yeah, no worries.
Really...
So the company was started about 4.5 years ago, really with the mission to bring regenerative medicine to all pets. The founder of the company at that time partnered with me to do that. He was not a scientist. He was a person who had a long-standing back problem that had been literally cured by using what was then a bone marrow concentrate injected into his back issue. And so he also had a dog with osteoarthritis and wondered why wasn't this readily available for all pets. So he partnered with me at the time to start Gallant really on this mission to bring regenerative medicine to all pets. He was very good at raising capital. I was good at running companies. So it was a perfect partnership, and we started Gallant. We invested early in manufacturing. We started, we had nothing at the time. So we acquired a couple companies. We learned how to get stem cells out of the uterus. We filed some IP, for some patents. And here we are today, 4.5 years later, with literally it's a platform company with a pipeline of 5 products that we are pursuing. So in 5 years' time, we're hoping that we'll have a number of products out on the market and approved.
So you talk about it so easy. It's just, yeah, we just acquired some companies and just did this and that. And it's
Raise some
just
capital.
just some easy steps to begin, as you know. So that's incredible. And so more a little bit on. Well, let's talk about that on the innovative side, or just building a company. How is that project? I know that you mentioned that you run other companies, and then, but is this your first kind of founding? Sort of, you founded the first company, or were there other startups that you participated?
There were other startups I participated in, but it takes a lot to get a startup off the ground and to really be successful. It takes a constellation of events,
You don't have to tell
capital,
us. You don't have to tell us.
capital, talent, management. It's just a lot of things. And this has been the first company that's had all of those things. We're a VC-backed company, so we've had a great, not only set of VCs that are participating in our board, which are, just very helpful in operations and also in capital raising, et cetera. But because of my own trajectory in the space and my own time spent working in regenerative medicine my entire career, I have a lot of connections in that space and was able to really leverage them. So when we started Gallant, I just picked up the phone and said, look, we're really going to do it this time. We wanted to do it so long ago, and we just couldn't for a variety of reasons. And so I was able to get my friends and et cetera to come work. And this has been the successful one. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's so funny. I can totally relate. It feels like at some point in your career, everything that you've done up until a certain point has been training for the work that you're doing now.
Yes.
And so with that in mind, can you talk to us a little bit more about that? What was that initial kind of path, and what did you learn along the way that really made the difference for you when it came to this startup?
Yeah, so I think scientifically the field had advanced a lot, and so it was we were constantly learning that whole time. That was one of the big things. I think your connections over time increase as well, and so when you're more connected, you have more opportunities for things that you need, capital, talent, et cetera. And I think I learned a lot about leadership along the way. Leadership is a big mission of mine. We have I try to lead from a position of having a values-based culture, promoting, emotional intelligence and caring for our team, et cetera. And I learned, when you go to a number of different companies, you learn a lot sometimes about what leadership, how leadership can, tank your company, or how leadership can, prevent you from moving forward. Well, the opposite is also true, that good leadership can also be incredibly synergistic and cause an exponential amount of progress to be made in a short amount of time. And so that's the piece that I'm super interested in.
Very interesting. So, can you tell us a little bit about the product? So, I'm the vet, and I never had a stem cell product in the hospital. So, what are those products? Maybe the nearest one. Can you give us a flavor of how would I incorporate it? It's like talking about new thing like telemedicine. Okay, well, how do you incorporate it? Or you will majorly fail doing telemedicine in your hospital because you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the talk track, you don't understand the processes. What is the sort of, you can talk about one or several products. What is that diagnostic journey lead into prescription of it, and what does the application of it look like? Because it's not just a pill to send home with. So what does that whole journey look like for a veterinarian?
Yeah.
And even layer on top of that, maybe costs, for the first
Hmm.
product that you guys are trying to bring to market.
Hmm. Yeah, so those are great questions, and it's definitely better. Regenerative medicine is definitely not something that is commonly used, mostly because it's quite expensive right now, because it's autologous and not off the shelf, which is why we wanted to create something that the veterinarian could actually either store in ultra cold storage in their practice, or that we can ship on demand. And so the products, our pipeline has 5 products in it. The first one is feline chronic gingivostomatitis, and that will initially be rolled out to veterinary dental specialists, and then on to general practitioners. Then there's osteoarthritis for dogs and cats, and canine atopic dermatitis, and feline chronic kidney disease. So let's just say you have any number of those, you're seeing any number of those diseases in your practice. The vision is that every veterinarian one day will have a freezer that sits on top of their countertop or underneath their counter, that they will have vials of stem cells in that they can just reach for any one of those particular conditions, since those are the ones we're pursuing right now. And they're given intravenously. So you would do your normal diagnostics, et cetera, and just place a catheter in the cephalic vein and give them slowly intravenously. We give it in 2 doses, 14 days apart. And then many animals don't need another dose. Some animals need another dose in 6 months. We haven't, fleshed out all the dosing regimes, but those are the pretty common ones that we use right now. And the duration of effect, especially for osteoarthritis, can be anywhere from 6 months, and some dogs we've seen go out past a year. So every dog is different, every cat is different, but the idea is that you are giving the stem cells, you're enhancing their quality of life, you're mitigating what is going on with that pet, and there's a duration effect. So there's should be a quality of life enhancement for the pet parent as well, because they're not dosing the animal every day or every month, etc. The products also can be used synergistically with other products. So they're not meant really to be used alone, but our vision is that they will become part of the standard of care. So, for example, Librela just came out. Librela is a monoclonal antibody that blocks a pain receptor. So it's something that, you can use that, but you can also use stem cells to actually, mitigate the disease process that's going on in the joints at the same time. So that's the idea behind it, and that's how veterinarians would use it.
And you mentioned that they're sitting in the fridge, but being autologous drugs, is that something that is derived from the patient and has to be delivered back to the same patient, or maybe I'm just confused?
Great question. So we're developing what they call off-the-shelf therapies. So they're universal cell therapies, and our head of regulatory likes to call them ready to use. And so what we do is we take a uterus that's just from an FDA qualified animal, and they're just spayed. And so they send us the uterus. It goes into our CGMP laboratory. We harvest the stem cells, we grow them up, and we can create 30 million doses from one 3.5 gram uterus. And so then we have those all in vials that are sitting in the freezer. And so the idea then is those can treat, so for a cat, they could treat any cat. So if you're a veterinarian that has one of these freezers, then we could ship them to you. They're sitting in your freezer. They have 6 months to a year shelf life inside the freezer. You take them out, you thaw them, you dilute them with saline, and you give them intravenously. So it's what they call allogeneic or universal.
That's fantastic, and it
So cool. It's just such a fascinating, like, emerging area. Yeah, thanks for sharing it. So interesting. I guess that probably brings us through all the time that we have. Although I have like 5 other questions I'd like to ask you. I guess you can come back, tell us how the journey's going. We like to end every episode in the same way, so we got a couple questions for you. First is another a book, a YouTube video, TED Talk, something that you found inspiring on your journey so far that you'd like to share with our listeners.
Sure. The first one is the book is Emotional Intelligence Habits by Travis Bradbury, and this whole concept of emotional intelligence is super interesting to me, in that Research has shown that IQ, or cognitive intelligence, is only responsible for about 20% of our success, but that emotional intelligence is responsible for about 60%. So, and it's something that we can all learn and we can all improve upon. And so this book really goes over steps to how to do that.
That's awesome, especially because our profession, and again, I'm quoting this all the time, but I don't remember where this came from, but one of the lowest EQ professions. So we all, as veterinarians, can learn about the emotional intelligence. And the second question that we ask,
I didn't know that.
yeah, very low, pretty high on IQ, but pretty low on EQ. And
Yeah.
is there a guest that you would like to recommend us to invite to the show that is also innovative and interesting like yourself?
Yeah, there's the CEO. Her name is Celia Halua, and she's the CEO of a company called Loyal. And they're just doing a really cool thing. They're looking at therapies that can extend the lives of dogs, especially like large breed dogs. You know how they die a lot earlier than smaller pets. And so she's just a super interesting person, and it's a very intriguing concept to bring a therapy like that to the marketplace. So I think she could be interesting.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.